A customer asked me to build a display shelf for a pretty good sized collection of these challenge coins, and it basically just needs to be a shelf with a groove in it so that you can kind of stand up against it without falling off. Of course, I can't just build a simple set of shelves, so this is going to be my framework for the outside. I'm going to picture frame this, and we're going to do some maple accents in the corners. And then for the back panel, I'm actually going to do a book-matched panel veneered onto a piece of thin plywood. That's going to give me a nice stable panel that won't shrink and swell too much. And it's going to give me a nice strong mounting point so we can attach it to the walls. So I'm going to start off with cutting the veneers out for the back panel. We'll get those glued up, and while that's drying, I can start working on the framework. So let's get started on that.
I found this wide piece of walnut that had a lot of flaky cracks on the face grain on one side. Luckily, the other side was still solid enough and had some nice figured grain to it. I switched to the 3/4 inch resaw blade and sliced off a couple veneers from the backside. With the veneers cut, I could open them up as a book match and get them ready to glue to the panel. I don't have a vacuum press for doing veneers, so I put a piece of plywood with two 25-pound plates on top of it and left that sit overnight till the glue dried. All right, with our back panel glued up, now we can go ahead and get these pieces mitered down to the final sizes for the outer frame. Then we can lay out our shelves and start doing our dadoes. Set up a saw block on the miter sled, cut everything to its final length, then I tilted the blade over to 45 degrees and cut all my miters for the corners. All right, next I'm going to cut my shelves to length. I'm going to dado them in about 1/4 inch on each side, so 15 inches should work pretty good. And once I get those cut down to length, then I can figure out my width and get my layout in here. And we'll rip everything down and start laying out the dados. With all the shelves cut to length, I went ahead and figured out what the spacing was going to be and marked that out on all the side pieces. With all my shelves laid out, I used the table saw to cut the rabbet in for the back panel. All right, I've just got my stop dados laid out on the side pieces so my shelves can fit into there. with these being as small as they are, I'm not going to fight with the router or the table saw for cutting these out. I'm just going to take them over to the drill press and use the Forstner bits to hog it out. Then I'll come back and clean it up with a chisel, make sure everything fits nice and tight.
Now, before I forget, I need to cut this groove into the shelves and the bottom part of the framework just for the coins to sit in so they don't fall off the shelf. All right, that's going to do it for all the framework. I've got my grooves cut in for the coins, and all my dadoes are cut into the side pieces for my shelves. I think before I get any further, let me go ahead and sand everything up because that'll be a lot easier to sand it now before I assemble it and have a lot of things in the way. So get everything sanded up and go ahead and glue the frame together, and then we can cut the back to fit once all the glue's dried on that. The main reason I didn't put the shelves in yesterday was these miter joints. I want these to be nice and tight. And since I'm just using tape to hold them together, I really don't want to try to jam these in there. So now I can just come back in, measure our actual opening. We'll drop these in, and then we can go get the back cut out and get it ready for install. I cut all my shelves down to length and added a little glue in the slot. Not that it's actually going anywhere, but I did anyway. Then I snapped all the shelves into place. And of course, before I finished, I had to try to confuse myself on which direction the shelves go, but I got it in right. Everything's okay. With the shelves installed, I could cut the back panel down and get that installed too. Here I'm just adding a piece of blue tape. This is where I'm going to make my cross cut, and since I'm going across the grain, it does have a tendency to chip out a little bit. The tape will just help hold it in place. With the back panel cut down to size, I went ahead and sanded everything up to 220, made sure it was nice and smooth so I didn't have to fight with it between the shelving. Then I went ahead and put the mounting holes in too while it was easier to measure. sure the glue would probably hold the panel in just fine, but since we're going to load this thing up with coins, I figured we'd better just put some brad nails in it just to be safe. I cut some splines out of maple, and then once the glue was dried on the back panel, I used a jig on the table saw to cut my corner slots, glued everything in place, and let that sit overnight. One of my favorite new additions to the shop is this remote control for the dust collector. I just found it on Amazon. I think I paid 60 or 70 bucks for it. If you're interested, I'll leave a link down in the description. All right, we'll sit till tomorrow, then we'll come off, clean everything up. Just need to sand it, finish. Once all the sanding was done, I added a couple coats of tung oil and then finished it off with a coat of hard wax. Once the finish had a chance to cure, I went ahead and installed it for them. We loaded it up with coins, and to be honest, this is maybe a quarter of the collection, so there may be another shelf in the future. That's going to wrap this one up. Thanks for watching as always, and we'll see you in the next one. I'm shooting video.